I just appreciate the discussion we've had, and I look forward to seeing Mr. Brown's amendment here, but I don't think what we are doing here is going to be damaging that effort. In fact, it's very, very important. As you know, Secretary Austin had a stand down all over the military, and we pulled our soldiers off the battlefield to sit around and talk about this issue. And that's a very extreme action in itself, but then he set up a countering extremism working group that was supposed to produce a report by July 14th, and we have yet to see it, based on a definition that we don't have of extremism. And what he has directed them to do is to set up new screening capabilities to continuously vet those who serve our nation to see if they are extremists. He set up a new education and training for individuals who they view as extremism, and including whether they read, follow, or like what they say are extremist material on social media. They are setting up a new screening questionnaire for individuals who are coming into the military to see if they have any extremist views. How can you do any of these items without the clear definition to begin with? And so what my amendment simply says is that you have to, for 30 days, wait, and you can't work on this until you give us the definition. If you give us the definition and you set forth the clear due process protections and make sure the First Amendment rights aren't violated, then please complete your report and we'll feel more confident in it. But this is just a common sense action by those of us who have been charged with overseeing our military to make sure that this is done in an orderly and proper way. And I look forward to working with everyone and ask for your support of this amendment. I yield back. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Fallon.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be brief. I completely agree with my colleague on this amendment. And we had a discussion about extremism in the military in this committee, and we asked each branch of the service how many people were separated for extremist activity. 2 branches didn't get back to us and 2 did. I believe the Army was, out of the 1.1 million Guard active reserve, were 9, a total of 9 out of 1.1 million, if I'm not mistaken. And the Marines, out of 222,000 active in reserve, I believe the number was 4. We've talked to some of the flag officers in the Army and the Navy, the Navy and the Air Force, who haven't gotten back to us, but they do believe that that number will be consistent. So we don't know the exact number, but it's probably in the neighborhood of about 26 members. And we had a stand down. We pay the military $146 billion total in payroll. And if you factor in weekends and leave, that leaves about 231 work days, which is $632 million is what that stand down cost. Or $24 million for each moron that was separated from the service due to their extremist beliefs. It's an extraordinarily expensive decision. So I completely support this amendment. We have to define what the hell we're talking about. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. As I said, it also just to clarify, it says within 30 days, but basically until they define it, they can't deal with it, I believe is the gist of Ms. Hartzler's amendment, basically. And I just think that goes too far. I think we certainly should have them define it, but there's definitely issues and challenges in telling them they can't deal with it at all. Until that point is further than I would like to go. Any further discussion? Hearing none. The question occurs on the amendment offered by Ms. Hartzler. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no. No. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to ask for a recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote has been requested. Further consideration of this amendment will be suspended until we decide to vote on it. All right. It is now in order to consider log 9.
Mr. Chairman, based on the last amendment, I'll withdraw this amendment.
The amendment is withdrawn. So it is now in order to consider log 1027R2 offered by Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Will the clerk please distribute the amendment? Without objection, the reading of the amendment is dispensed with. The chair recognizes the gentleman for the purposes of explaining his amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to start. I think there is honorable intentions in this amendment or this part of the chairman's mark. However, I think it may actually be a solution looking for a problem. So I'm actually asking to strike part of the chairman's mark, and that part which establishes the mayor in the chain of command of the D.C. National Guard. And I've served for many, many years in the National Guard, and I will not stand here and say at no point is it political, because I can tell you, if you look at the border, if you look at the civil unrest, if you look at all the things that happened this summer, we very much know that governors did make decisions based on political decisions. I will tell you, the current chain of command goes directly from the D.C. Commander-in-Chief to the President through the SecDef. I do not think that needs to change based on the past administration, based on the current administration, or based on a future administration. I think all that will do is take away a capability and an opportunity for the D.C. Guard to respond quickly and without too many bosses, too many people who are in charge of one problem. It will cause them to be unable to respond as quickly as they need to, as we witnessed on January the 6th. People got engaged in a problem that were not in the chain of command, and during that time, what we had D.C. National Guardsmen ready to come to respond to this Capitol when it was attacked, and they were not allowed to because of a murky people getting inside of a chain of command that should not have been inside a chain of command. It is imperative that this president, the last president, and all future presidents have the ability to call up the D.C. National Guard. What this would require now, if for whatever reason the president had a local emergency here in the Capitol, it would require them, if they refused or the mayor of D.C. disagreed with that president, regardless of their party, it would require then that the president reach out to Maryland or Virginia or Mississippi or Michigan or California to get those guardsmen there. I think what we need to do, if we need to study this, I'm fine with that, but right now we need to strike this language, and we need to keep the chain of command in D.C. straight to POTUS and straight to SecDef until we explore it and make sure that we know what we're doing rather than taking that away. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Further debate? Ms. Escobar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to speak in opposition to this amendment, and I'd like to point out to my colleagues that the whole reason why this structure even existed is because DC did not have local government. Local government now exists in Washington, D.C., and so I think it's important that we keep local control over decisions like these, and that is why I urge my colleagues to oppose this amendment. I yield back.
Thank you. And I oppose this amendment as well. There are options, as there are in any state, even if the governor of a state does not want to use the Guard. It has been used where the federal government has nationalized it, federalized it, and used the federal Guard in that regard. But the city of D.C. is the only area in the country that doesn't have control over its own National Guard. And that played out in a series of problematic ways in the last year. When we had the protests that happened over the course of the summer, there was a lot of controversy about the way the D.C. mayor and D.C. police interacted or didn't interact with the chief of staff of the Army, and how they conducted themselves. Then certainly on January 6th, there was a lot of controversy about how that played out. D.C. should have the right to have some say in what goes on inside of their own territory, and the mayor of D.C. is in charge of that area. It will always be a cooperative effort, as it is now, for that matter, as it is in every state with the Guard. But I just feel that D.C. should have the same rights as every other state in terms of how the Guard is deployed within the territory that the mayor, in this case, governor in other cases, is responsible for. And so I would urge a no vote.